HR employees of Reddit. What was the most ridiculous hilarious complaint you ever received? My work has one men's toilet. Had one coworker complain that another guy kept using the bathroom before him and doing big ol' poos. But the way he said it was like this guy knew when he was about to go ninja'd in just before him, dropped a massive stinker, and then forced the other guy to marinate in the smell when he went for a leak afterwards. We ended up adding a can of air freshener to the bathroom. And the next complaint that came in was the poo guy never used it. I've worked in several where they install those auto air fresheners. Beforehand it smells like after the fact it smells like rolled in cinnamon. HR consultant for 10 plus years. You won't believe the amount of times I've had to shut people down for trying to sell their pyramid scheme side hustle in the office. What about when it's your boss? One of our bosses went to a Deepak Chopra thing and came back with a poster she put on the wall saying, "In one life we all wear many hats," with a picture of 5 differently colored hats stacked on top of each other. Then she spent the 6 months trying to talk people into buying stuff from her like toothpaste, jeans, all sorts of stuff. We'd be in her office on a meeting and suddenly it would segue into a sales pitch. What was particularly annoying about this was that her and her husband are well off, if not rich. He's a senior doctor. She's a head accountant. They own multiple homes but are still trying to squeeze a bit more money out of the people who work under them. She was actually a nice person. But hell, we got tired of being asked to buy stuff from her. Was once asked to investigate a harassment situation where 3 different women were coming onto a male co-worker throughout their shift. I took down the details. Got the names. Easy peasy investigation, so I thought. A week later, nobody by these descriptions or names had ever worked for the company. I decided to talk to the gentleman again. After a lengthy conversation where things didn't quite stack up, I asked him how these women communicated with him. I shall not. With a straight face. He looks me in the eye and replies telepathically like I'm some kind of idiot. I had never sent an employee for psychological evaluation up to that point, and I hope never to have to again. So yeah, I was asked by a delusional schizophrenic to conduct a harassment investigation on the voices in his head. Not HR. But I have a story about an our person that I will never forget. The company I worked for hired a new girl in the HR department. She was young and very enthusiastic. I'm sure this was probably her first job out of college. Cut a week or so later, and I'm riding in the elevator on the way up to the executive floor. And she steps in with me. A couple floors later we stop. And an older gentleman wearing a polo shirt and jeans gets on. Before I could greet him, she says, "Pretty casual for a work day." Huh. I had to stifle my laughter when he replied with, "That's one of the benefits of owning the company." She turned an amazing color of red that I haven't seen since. It was all in good fun though. She ended up working there a long time. To be fair, if I was the owner, I'd have admired that. She's brave enough to pull someone up for dressing too casually for the job. Which means she obviously takes her job very seriously. My partner is in HR. Someone took a shot on the job site. He was given a photo complete with measurements. The people that complained wanted DNA testing done. He's still not sure why they measured it. We had a guy in our office who suffered from some sort of medical condition. Because he wasn't managing it well, he would shit his pants in the office. That was awful. But hey, he's got a serious condition. So nobody wanted to take it to HR. Then, he started walking around the office while shitting his pants, which would cause the shit to fall out of his pants and onto the floor. We literally had to watch our step in order to avoid stepping in human feces. HR was, at our company, typically ineffective. So we started taking pictures of every pile and emailing it to every HR team member in our building. They eventually put him on disability. They measured it so they can match the projectile with the butthole that fired it. Obviously. You wouldn't believe the headaches that I received when management signed a new copier printer lease which reduced the overall number of printers in exchange for centrally located multiplex copiers. Evidently, people feel their social standing is signified by if they have a printer, or two, in their office. My favorite was an executive assistant who stated that Because she wears heels to work, she couldn't walk to the new copier and requested that a reasonable accommodation would be to replace the printer she had in her office. It person here. The amount of people that have printer envy is astounding. And if they have color printing and someone else doesn't. Oh man, suddenly I have a job function that requires it as well. Always seems to be the people over 45ish that care so much. I told my coworker as professionally as I could that it wasn't appropriate for her to be using her phone while at work. Teaching kids, supposedly. She spent all her time on Facebook. Little kids would be screaming and wailing on each other literally 10 feet away and she was totally oblivious. She complained by email to HR that I was rude and confrontational. They pulled me aside and told me to be more careful about how I spoke to coworkers. I told them my side of the story. They spoke to her again. She got a written warning. They didn't tell me what happened, but I gather from office gossip that she lost her shit and started shouting at the HR staff. Rude and confrontational perhaps? Anyway, she's on her final warning now and she has a habit of hitting on the married dads of our kids. Involving children and adult matters. Why hasn't your mummy paid your fees yet? Don't you want to come to daycare? And generally being an unprofessional, self-absorbed pitiso. Can't wait until she gets fired. An employee used very derogatory terms to make fun of a customer who was in the back of the store. While talking to the customer who was at the counter. Who happened to be the other customer's mother. Yikes. Kind of related. But when I worked in the bakery of a grocery store, there was this old woman who liked to complain to us about petish. Anyway, one day just before my lunch she was ranting to me. About how the bread wasn't well organized and she couldn't read the price tags. And was being really rude and condescending. I just smiled and said I guess it could be better. What do you think, mom? Yeah. My mom was standing right behind her. Waiting for me as we were going to get lunch together. The look on the woman's face was priceless. I saw her in the store a few more times but she never bothered me again. 20 years in HR. 2 female employees visited me to complain that their female team member didn't wear underwear under her work pants. I had the opposite of this, due to the uniform. Any underwear that wasn't pure white would be seen. I got fed up of people commenting that they could see my off-white underwear that when they did. I'd simply say that's impressive. I'm not wearing any. You must be staring really hard to imagine them. Shut the comments down pretty quick. I'm not in HR. But someone called HR on me. I work with a few people that aren't that fluent in English. One of my coworkers was trying to explain to me what kind of tacos he ate and could not remember the word for stingrays. So he took my notebook and drew a picture of a stingrays and wrote the word turtle. So it looked like this, crudely drawn stingray plus the word turtle. A lady I work with went through my notebook. Saw the picture of the stingray plus the word turtle. She called HR because she thought I was writing notes about her in my notebook. She said that horribly drawn stingray plus the word turtle meant that I want to punch her in the face because she is slow like a turtle. Definitely a reach. I didn't get in trouble. I was just told by my boss that I'm not allowed to talk about turtles anymore in case it upsets her. I rarely talk about turtles. So this isn't really a problem for me. I think I dropped the word tortoise around her once or twice just to mess with her now. So now we know where the I like turtles kid ended up. As a passionate fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, this would be a serious problem for me. We had a complaint that the toilet roll holders were too low in the stalls because when a guy was taking a poo his knees were hitting the holders. We then lifted all the stalls toilet roll holders 8 inches on whole company site so no knees would hit the toilet roll holders. No complaints since. HR working for the people. I worked in HR and payroll at a restaurant hotel. Inevitably I'd get 5 or 6 phone calls from former staff members in mid-April wondering where their tax information was. One former waitress called reaming me out because she couldn't file her effing taxes because of us and she needed her refund since she had damn kids to feed. So I found a copy of her W-2 which had been mailed to her previous address. I noticed she had only worked for us about a week and we hadn't even deducted federal taxes. I went to put her current address in her old employee folder and noticed her manager had written up a dismissal form. It asked if we should ever rehire this employee and he wrote only if she took anger management classes first. I was the complainer. My buddy was dating a girl that worked in HR at my company. Their relationship starting was totally unrelated to me. They had gone to college together. He dumped her and she didn't take it well and started threatening my job since I was still friends with him. I lodged a complaint just through the main email, complaints@company.com or whatever it was. My complaint was assigned to guess who. I ended up having to independently schedule a meeting with the VP of HR because the regular reps and middle managers were protecting their rep rather than believing me. Not HR, but my company is too small to have one. So it just falls on me. Used to have an AR clerk who would snack at her desk all day long. We are a pretty casual, laid back company, so it's not a big deal as long as she was getting her work done. But then it escalated to having food constantly being delivered, tacos in the morning, pizza at lunch, Chinese in the afternoon. It was bizarre and made it difficult for her to work when she's eating full meals all day. I was on the fence about saying something until she brought in an instant pot. She plugged it in and cooked a freaking pork roast at her desk. Poured in BBQ sauce she brought and ate on it all day. I was dumbfounded. It was so strange. I pulled her aside the next day and told her how unprofessional it was. She was shocked and told me I was being unfair because I never specifically said no one was allowed to bring in an instant pot. She truly seemed genuinely surprised that she wasn't allowed to do that. She scaled it down after that. But I sometimes wonder how much further she would have gone if I never said anything. It's a good thing you stopped her. She was probably 2 steps away from bringing a charcoal grill and cooking steaks. Within the next few months the office would have become a teppanyaki restaurant. This is one of those weird things you see in your contract when you start working there. Do not cook pork roasts at your desk. And you ask if it's a joke because no one would ever do that and they just stare at you with a look of recollection of those past days when the horror was real. She installs a kitchen and hires a chef. That would be the final form. She came in with a complaint that she tried to give one of the younger guys a hug and he refused. His story was that he basically had to run away. I had to explain to a middle-aged woman that it was not her right to hug people who didn't want to be hugged. She still didn't get it and left thinking she was still in the right. I worked in HR and my coworker hated me. She wanted someone else to get the job I did and she would complain about me to management for anything. The final straw for everyone was when I sneezed and she slammed her keyboard on her desk. Basically ran out of the room and didn't come back for 30 minutes. Management called me in and said I was making too much noise. I told them I sneezed and they said she would complain about me every day, so they didn't believe her but had to make it look like they were doing something. She left shortly after. What a nutcase. Not HR. But my friend who has recently told me about a VP at his company making a post on LinkedIn with one of the new employees as his WCW Woman Crush Wednesday. The WCW lady was happy about it. The complaint came from 2 women who didn't get the promotion to that position. Not an our employee. But I recently reported a bus driver for bringing his girlfriend to work and rubbing her feet while driving. She sat on the spot right behind the driver and put her feet where he could reach for them with one hand. I took a picture of the whole thing and debated on what to do with it for a while. On the one side, I didn't want this guy to lose his job nor have to explain why he was rubbing his girlfriend's feet at work. Imagine the awkwardness. On the other side, he missed a turn and then took a U-turn on a downhill blind curve where we could have easily gotten nailed. In the end I came to the conclusion, when other people's lives are in your hands, that's what your hands should focus on. I was the one being complained about. A patient had asked if it was okay to remove her IV fluids cause she was going home. She was one of those people who was very convinced that if we took her fluids out, she would die. She was admitted for the common cold and uses her insurance to pay like this so she didn't have to spend a dime. Anyway, I told her that it's okay mom. We're just running regular saline water through your IV. No more meds. You can go home today and we can take that out. Get a notice from HR the next day saying I wasn't using proper medical terminology for IV fluids. HR didn't douche. They just tossed the complaint at me without asking questions.